Mental Health Through Will Training by Abraham A. Lowe. Chapter 1, Part 2 Temper, Symptoms, and Insight. Panel discussion conducted by patients. Frank, panel leader. We will discuss today the article on temper and insight. It says there that in the temperamental deadlock, people are not quarreling over real issues, but over whether one person is right and the other wrong. I shall give an example. A number of times on the panel, I mentioned that my mother does not set the breakfast table. One item that is particularly irritating to me is the sugar bowl. It seems to me it is always empty. It is certainly not a matter of great moment, whether it is filled or not. It only takes a few seconds to fill it. The fact is, I have to fill it practically every morning. Before I had my recovery training, this used to irritate me to no end. I felt I had the right as a son to have the sugar bowl filled, but I was denied that right. Ridiculous as it sounds, my mother and I were in a deadlock over the issue of the sugar bowl until I applied the recovery language and knew that right and wrong are phony issues in domestic life. I now fill the sugar bowl every other day, and it each time it makes me feel good to know that I don't get worked up over the trivialities anymore. I think I now have insight into the phony nature of temper. Tilly. Several months ago, I had an argument with a lady upstairs. I wanted to make a telephone call, and when I took off the receiver, she was talking, so I thought, I'll wait a while. I waited 15 minutes, and she was still talking. Then I heard her say out to the other party, somebody's trying to get on the phone. I said, I'd like to make a call, and I've been waiting 15 minutes already. She said, all right, go ahead, and hung up with a bang. Soon after I was finished with the call, she came downstairs and asked, what's the matter? Is something burning? I said, no, but I have to go shopping, and I had to make that call. She got very excited, so I said, if you don't quiet down, I will not talk to you. That made her mad. She said, you have no right to tell me to get off the line. I would never think of doing such a thing. I have too much character. I said, are you telling me I have no character? I lost my temper then, and I gave it to her all right. After she left, I called Gertrude, and she said, you can't afford to lose your temper because of your health. I didn't just like that, and I still thought I was right. But I was awfully tense all that day, and I had my air hunger again, and the pressure around the chest, and the symptoms did not disappear for more than a week. A couple of days ago, I met this lady again. The building is ours, and I asked her politely to please tell her boy to keep off the grass. Then she said my daughter, Doris, caused much more damage to the lawn than her son. This time I smiled and refused to get into an argument. I was sore, but the after effect lasted just a short time. Ada. A few weeks ago, my husband suggested we go to the movies, and this particular movie was a mile from home. It was a nice Sunday, and he thought we should walk. One thing I can't stand is strolling. I want to walk fast and get there because I'm tense. So I told him I wouldn't stroll. He said he rushes all week, and on Sundays he likes to take a slow walk and refuses to be rushed. This all happened within 2 blocks, and he said, I'm sick and tired of arguing, and we'll get on a streetcar. We did, and I was angry. But when the show started, I forgot all about the argument, and I didn't work myself up as I should have done if that had happened a year ago. At that time, I wouldn't have talked to him for several days, or I would have thrown up to him that he was inconsiderate and selfish and didn't care whether I suffered. Frank, I think that what Tilly and Ada said illustrated what I brought out about right and wrong being a phony issue. Tilly talked for about 5 minutes, but I didn't hear one sentence that had to do with the objective realities, and Ada didn't say a word about the actual facts of walking. She didn't bring out the fact that the distance was too far to walk, or that it was necessary to walk faster to get there on time. All of this didn't matter. The issue was whether one person would get his way or the other. Anne, several months ago, my husband's sister came through Chicago and had to wait 16 hours for her train east. So we invited her to spend the night with us. My son offered to let his aunt use his room and he would sleep upstairs. I got flustered because I did not know whether I could clean the house in time. It seemed too much of a job for me to get my son's room ready. So I set about cleaning and I was quite pleased with the effort I made. The room looked really like a guest room. To be sure that it remained clean, I asked my boy not to go into the room. But lo and behold, before long, Johnny was in the room, and his dog with him, and the boy was eating pretzels. I lost my temper and gave him a real tongue lashing. A few minutes later, when I was vacuuming the living room rug, I suddenly felt fatigued. It seemed I couldn't go on. It was such an effort. I wanted to lie down, but suddenly it dawned on me that the tired feeling had come on so suddenly that it was, of course, the result of my temper. I took up the work again, and the fatigue was gone in no time. I think that the insight that the fatigue was a mere feeling helped me get rid of it. Ada, something happened this morning where my recovery training gave me insight into my temper. Our janitor dislikes children, and when he sees them on the sidewalk, he pushes them around. I used to argue with him about it, but don't do it anymore, as a rule. There's an empty lot near our house, and the boys and girls play there. This morning, my boy and 5 others were playing there, and the janitor came along and said he would call the police, and my boy came up crying. He was afraid he would go to jail. I was furious. The janitor has nothing to do with the empty yard, and it was none of his business to chase the children. I ran into the bedroom and pulled up the window. The janitor was there, and I was ready for him. Then I felt my palpitations and tenseness, and I decided I was doing wrong to show my temper. I spoke to my boy and told him to go out and play and not to mind the janitor. Later on my way to recovery, I saw the janitor on the street, but I paid no attention to him and went my way and saved myself the palpitations and the discomfort. Temper, symptom, and insight. Physician's comment on panel discussion. What the patient sitting on the panel presented so dramatically can be summed up in simple language. In former days, they said, we responded with temper to trivial irritations. There was a severe after effect with mounting tenseness, with symptoms and agonies of suffering. Today we still indulge our tempers. The occasions are few, and the after effect is short. The symptoms and sufferings are transient and mild. Frank, with his flair for terse and compact expression, gave the proper phrasing to the change in reaction when he remarked that he has now insight into the phony nature of temper. He made another thought-provoking statement when he surmised that in a temperamental deadlock, people are not quarreling over real issues, but over whether one person is right and the other wrong. But what precisely determines whether a person is wrong or right, and whether an issue is real or unreal? When Tilly cut into the neighbor's telephone conversation, was she wrong? And when the woman on the other end of the line hung up with a bang, was she right? Frankly, neither you nor I or anybody else can answer these questions intelligently. Tilly could easily marshal the most compelling reasons for proving that the intrusion was justified. She had been waiting a long time, and her call was important while the lady upstairs was merely chatting, wasting her own time and imposing on other people who were busy and in a hurry. But the neighbor on the upper floor would have no difficulty arguing back that Tilly's interference was plainly an act of deliberate provocation, uncalled for and inexcusable. Are Tilly's arguments right and real, and are the lady's counter-arguments wrong and unreal? Where is the judge who could render a decision as to who is the villain and who is the victim? Let us take a closer look at the matter. Tilly interrupted the conversation of her neighbor. That neighbor gave every indication that she had not finished conversing. She clearly intended to continue, but was forced by Tilly's intervention to cease speaking. Leaving the question of right and wrong to one side for the present, the situation seems to be clear. The will of one person conflicted with the will of another person. Force was pitted against force. Power clashed with power. As it happened, the one person yielded and the other triumphed. This was a fight a show of strength or weakness, a contention for the possession or use of an object, telephone wire. Why inject the issue of right and wrong? Why not rather speak the plain, unadorned, honest, and sincere language of warfare, competition, constraint, and compulsion? In that language, the thing was a tussle, a test of strength, a resort to force. Tilly waited 15 minutes before she finally broke in on the conversation. The impulse to use force was certainly operative during these long drawn out 15 minutes, but it was kept in check. The inclination to exercise power was curbed during the period of hesitation. It was only after her patience snapped that Tilly realized the impulse. Why did she wait? Why did she beat down her own pressing inclination? The answer is plain. Tilly knew that using force meant to disturb the peace among neighbors. She knew that the real and only issue was peace or power, force or friendship, not the wholly irrelevant question of right and wrong. Tilly knew she was using force, but she claimed she exercised a right. The use of force was a fact. The claim to exercise a right was an opinion. You may say she thought or assumed or guessed she had a right to use force, but it was merely a thought, an assumption only, nothing but a guess. And thoughts, assumptions, and guesses of this kind are imagined. The right which Tilly claimed was a figment of imagination. The force which she used was a fact of realistic experience. If Tilly's reaction is somehow typical of temperamental outbursts in general, then we may conclude that in temper a right is subjectively claimed and force objectively used. A claim ought to be verified. An opinion ought to be tested, proved, and substantiated. That calls for a judge. Who is to be the judge in a matter of temper? And even if there were a judge, all he could do would be to hand down an opinion. His opinion may be final, it may compose and terminate the fight, but it would be nothing more than an opinion rendered by a duly constituted court instead of the contending parties. True enough, the judge's opinion is supposed to be impartial, unbiased, based on evidence, testimony, records, and documents. But no matter how heavily documented or how scrupulously unbiased the court decision may be, nevertheless, it is and remains an opinion. After the verdict is pronounced, one legal opinion has been substituted for the two private opinions. The lawsuit may then be settled or decided, but the question of who is right and wrong still remains open. The loser may claim with good logic that the judge erred and justice was miscarried. He may even contend that the law is wrong. You see here that the issue of right and wrong cannot be determined, not even by law. It can only be decided or settled by a court order. Right and wrong are always opinions, assumptions, suppositions, conjectures, and speculations. That means they are guesses, subjective, unimaginative, unreal. Opinions interpret facts. It ought to be clear to you by now that both the opinions and interpretations are guesses, hence imaginations. It ought to be just as clear that facts are realities. Temper contains one opinion and many facts. The opinion is that of right and wrong. The facts are the sensations, feelings, impulses, and acts, verbal and muscular, which are experienced or expressed in the temperamental sequence. In Tilly's altercation with the neighbor, the facts were dynamic, impetuous, and fierce. On the other hand, the opinions of right and wrong were pale, trite, and hackneyed. In spite of that, Tilly's attention was almost exclusively focused on her temperamental opinion, while the facts of her sensations, impulses, feelings, and acts went unobserved or unheeded. Yet her sensations were pressing, her feelings boiling, her impulses overpowering, and her acts menacing and stormy. Her heart palpitated, her knees shook, her throat contracted, and her voice trembled. She was well nigh convulsed with rage, hostility, and fury. But these facts received no or little mention in her report about the telephone conversation. All she claimed was that she kept waiting and that her intentions were frustrated and her plans thwarted. She thought of the wrong only that was done to her, and of the rights that were denied her. She was certainly not concerned about the fact that she used force or that she disturbed the peace. But force and peace are the outstanding facts of life. Force means that feelings, impulses, and acts are given ruthless expression without regard for the rights of others. Peace means that same elements are properly controlled in a deference to the sensibilities, interests, and claims of others. We may say Tilly's thoughts were narrowly focused on one restricted opinion, that she was right and the neighbor was wrong. But the facts of the situation she was not at all aware. Her insight was warped. It was centered on a personal opinion but ignored the objective fact. You remember that after the telephone call was finished, the outraged neighbor appeared in Tilly's apartment. This was, of course, I'm sorry, I lost my place. I'm just going to back up a little bit. It was centered on personal opinion but ignored the objective facts. You remember that after the telephone call was finished, the outraged neighbor appeared in Tilly's apartment. This was the occasion for another temperamental bout, in the course of which Tilly said, "I lost my temper and gave it to her all right." She then called Gertrude and told her, "You can't afford to lose your temper because of your health." This was an admonition to consider the realities of symptoms, sensations, and feelings as matters of first importance and to ignore the phony theories of right and wrong. Tilly's reaction was defiant. "I didn't just like that," she said, "and I still thought I was right." The phrase "I still thought" is revealing. It reveals that Tilly refused to accept the insight offered by Gertrude. She obviously realized that Gertrude's counsel was sound and realistic, but decided that she wanted temper and not help. The reason for the blunt refusal was that she didn't just like that. You see here why our patients, prior to being trained in recovery techniques, struggle against acquiring insight. They don't like it. They don't like insight because it deprives them of the excitement, drama, and vitality of soul-stirring and heartwarming fights. Fights provide the stir of action that is so sorely missing in the fears, confusion, and helplessness that characterize the lives of our patients. Fights give them a sense of living that has fled from the boredom of their daily existence. They offer the opportunity to display vigor, strength, decision, eagerness, determination, all of them elements which are painfully lacking in a drab routine of hopelessness and paralysis of will. Our patients want agitation and stimulation, not equilibrium and peace. They want exhilarating theories, not balancing realities. Feelings, they crave the use of force, not the adjustment of their sensations, feelings, and impulses. If you tell them that their unbridled tempers will upset health and disturb peace, their verbal and mental reply is, "I shall rather disturb peace and lose health than give up temper." It is the crowning glory of recovery that it was able to reverse this formula and to make patients adopt the principle that temper must be eliminated because it is the sworn enemy of peace and health. This radical change in attitude was beautifully demonstrated by Tilly in an encounter which she had with the same neighbor several months later. When challenged to a fight, she smiled and refused to get into an argument. She was sore, but the after effect lasted just a short time. Behavior was finally guided by the realities of peace and health, not by sentimental cravings for excitement and intellectual considerations for fictitious theories. Okay, that's the end of part 2. Next up, I'll do part 3. Thank you.